Thank you for joining us on our Q&A session with Bright MLS. I'm Lisa Naples, the president-elect of LCAR, and with me today is Brian Donnellan, the president and CEO of Bright MLS. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So I'll start with a little background about our discussion today, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sure.
Within the past few weeks, Midwest real estate data known as MRED, which is an MLS in the greater Chicago area, cut off Zillow's entire data feed. This caused confusion and outrage in the real estate market among agents, brokerages, and consumers. The conflict centers on Zillow's policy of blocking certain Compass real estate private exclusive listings, which Zillow argues violate its market transparency standards by initially hiding homes from the general public. MRED contends that Zillow is breaching its data licensing agreement by selectively filtering out these valid properties. This disagreement has triggered a federal antitrust lawsuit by Zillow, though a judge has since ordered the immediate restoration of the Chicago listings while the case is litigated. And just last week, another large MLS based in Nashville called Realtors operates in at least 6 states, threatened to pull Zillow's feed and then extended their deadline to negotiate to June 8th. So our members are reading these news reports about other MLSs and are more than a little concerned that it's going to show up at our front door. So we've asked you here today to provide guidance to our membership on these disputes and on how they may or may not affect the way we conduct business locally. And if you'd like to make a statement before we begin the questions, that would be great.
I'd like just to make a couple points, and you're right. There are a lot of things going on right now in Chicago and in Tennessee, but they've been going on for a while. I think what's happening right now has been set up for a couple of years now, and this has been coming. The one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we sort of push aside the noise and we focus on things that are really important. And Bright's core mission today, yesterday, tomorrow, moving forward, is to operate a neutral, even-handed, a pro-competitive marketplace. And there's a lot going on right now that highlights what that is. And there's some folks out there trying to do things that are different than they've done in the past. That does not mean that they're anti-competitive. We do not have any agreements that favor any brokerage out there. And we stated that. It may not necessarily come across in some of the news organizations out there, but we are neutral when it comes to what brokers do or want to do. We have a set of rules, and we want to make sure that all brokers play by fair rules. We are focused right now on reducing, operational friction. Whether we like it or not, we have many brokers. If I said 100, that might be too many, that cross many different MLS paths right now. And the cost for them to run their businesses across all these MLSs is significant. We have several large brokers that pay millions of dollars to manage, 40 to 50 MLSs across. Our job is to help our brokers reduce some of that friction and, quite honestly, some of their costs so that they can remain profitable. But the general statement that I want to make is that Bright remains neutral to whatever it is your brokerage model is. I think we've been in front of most MLSs out there in allowing more flexibility in the rules that we have. Quite honestly, we have one of the simplest rule sets out there. Having said that, I think we're going on a campaign over the next couple months to make sure everybody knows what it is you can do and you can't do within our rule set. So within that sort of context, we are neutral. We're here to provide transparency, and we don't favor anybody in here. I think we can probably get into some of the questions that you have.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. The first question is, what is Bright MLS's current policy regarding all or nothing data feeds? If a consumer portal like Zillow or Realtor.com decides to filter out certain Bright listings based on their own platform standards, does Bright have the rules and the appetite to completely pull the plug on that portal's data feed?
Well, we're going to get right to it, aren't we?
Yep.
Look, here's the thing. Bright sticks by its rules, right? We put them out there, we monitor it, we work with our brokers. We are not a fine first organization. As a matter of fact, we don't make any money on our fines. It is a absolute cost to us doing business, and it's one that we do and we take seriously. Um, we have IDX rules. We are modernizing our IDX rules all the time. We are modernizing our rules, making sure that we keep thinking about things in terms of IDX, but let's talk about AI, which are nobody's rules are actually set to take care of right now, because AI in the AI world is going to be completely different than what it is right now, both in terms of ownership, in terms of content, and everything else. But um, our rules have been the most flexible. We've been doing many of them for 25, maybe even 30 years. Internet only, that was in MRIS back in 2004. Coming Soon has been part of MRIS and Bright moving forward in what it is that we're doing since 2012. There's just so many different things that we've thought about in terms of what our rules are, what they mean, and what their application are. We are constantly looking at our rules right now. All or nothing. We run into the problem at one time is, are we a broker cooperative or are we not? So we've got to be very, very smart about this all or nothing concept, if you know what I mean. So we need to make sure that we're not doing anything that precludes brokers to try new areas at the same time. Our core value is still providing transparency for everybody in our marketplace to be able to find a listing. So that is what our focus is, that our rules are not against anyone, that it allows people to try new things um, without impeding on this idea that a majority of the listings are going to go unseen by brokers and agents out there. Um, and listen, there's a lot of noise out there. I would just on this topic, I would say this industry has been very, very slow to adapt to changing business models out there. And that's why I think we find ourselves at this spot right now, that they've been so stagnant for so long that all of a sudden people are saying, I don't want to do this anymore. So we have to keep that in mind as long as the marketplace stays fair and transparent. I know there's a lot in there, and we could probably dig into some of those things. But all or nothing is, I think, a very difficult place to start. There's a lot of different ways that you can keep your listings from going out in the world the way they are right now, but still keeping a transparent marketplace inside the multiple listing service.
Okay. Thank you. So it sounds like the rules are simple enough that right now you don't see a risk in being forced into this all or nothing position.
I mean, we could always get forced into this position, but I think our rules are flexible enough that all the different competing models that are going on right now fit into the world that keeps transparency. You have to actually if your desire is to keep listings off a particular website or from going out into the public, you're going to have to learn what the rules are, and we're going to actually spend some time with our staff and over the next 90 days to make sure that we have better explanations on how you can apply these rules to what it is that you want to do and remain transparent in this transparent marketplace by not hiding things.
Makes sense. All right, so next question. Zillow claims they're fighting for consumer transparency, while MRED is defending a broker's right to market a home privately. And you've touched on this. Where
Yeah.
does Bright MLS stand on this spectrum, and how does Bright balance the growing demand for public market transparency with the broker's desire for office exclusives or coming soon networks?
So the broker's desire for coming soon, private networks, and all these other different things. Look, my mind sort of blows up on some of these things because if it's on 5 private networks, how private actually is it? And I think at sometimes we're talking past everybody in terms of what it is we're doing. Um, I think this is a really important part here. Zillow is claiming that they are on the side of transparency, which I believe they are. Um, in this case, MRED and other brokers are saying that they're working to protect what sellers want to do here. And I think again, Bright is trying to thread that needle in terms of giving brokers options and how they do that, but remaining transparent. So I see that we're taking a neutral position here, and we should not find ourselves in trouble on either side. Now, that doesn't promise that that actually happens, but that's the line we're trying to do. We're trying to make rules that are flexible for brokers to try new ways of doing business, as well as keep that transparent marketplace. Ultimately, not for Zillow, but for buyers and sellers out there.
Yeah. Tricky balance, but I think that's the balance that is needed. Um,
Look, it is a tricky balance. And look, we could, I think if we got 3 o'clock now, we could do this until 8 o'clock today because, and I've said this for a long time, and I live with a broker and agent, so I feel a lot of these different things. The most wonderful thing about working at Bright is we have 100,000 independent contractors, and I put that in quote, that are all doing things in a different way. The problem with working upright is we have 100,000 people trying to do things slightly different. And there's always been that balance of making sure that we're not stepping on anybody's ability to try something new, as well as making sure that this transparency, I think is really, really important. And we want to make sure that we stand for that. And that's for the consumer at the end of the day, but also we want to make sure that it's not so strict that people can't try new ways of doing business out there and having the consumer decide what it is that they like at the end of the day.
right. Next question. Um, MRED's data cutoff was triggered by listings that are thousands of miles away from Illinois. Does Bright MLS have or plan to form any national alliances or cross jurisdictional data rules that could tie Lancaster data to compliance disputes in other states?
The answer is Bright has been doing this since its inception, and MRIS and Trend have both been across multiple states, multiple areas for a long time. Bright, or actually MRIS back in the day, was working with California in 7 of their MLSs out there. We've worked in Michigan. We're down in North Carolina. There's a couple of the places I'm missing while I'm under pressure here. But we've been national for a long time. Now, we don't talk about it. We have a national data set. We can do national things. We will not be encumbered by anybody else's rules and what it is that they're doing. So again, this is something that I'm not uncomfortable with. This is something that we have been doing for some time. The thing that happened in Chicago is probably unique to them, and it wouldn't happen to us.
Okay. So the footprint of Bright in multiple areas across the country, you don't foresee that having an impact. Something happening in another state isn't necessarily going to impact our marketplace here.
So what you were the way you're saying it is somebody else's rules would supersede our rules. I actually see it the opposite way, since I think we're ahead of most MLSs out there. In fact, all MLSs out there, when it comes to the rules and the rule set that we have and the flexibility that we have. They'll be assuming our rules, and they may have that problem, but I do not see us having that problem in our footprint by their rules.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I mean, does that make sense? Hopefully that
It
does.
it does, yeah. If Bright MLS ever found itself in a similar contract dispute with a major portal, how would Bright weigh its duty to enforce MLS rules against the immediate marketing detriment to our local Lancaster home sellers who expect their homes to be on Zillow?
Look, I don't know how to exactly answer that question, but Bright has a great relationship with every one of the portals out there, and I'm going to say everyone. Let's call it three major portals out there, whether that's Zillow or Realtor, um, or Homes. I speak with most of those folks, if not once a week, often. I speak with most of the major brokerages in the same time frame. I probably talk to the top 10 brokers, probably three-quarters of them in the past 2 weeks, and I'll probably have a conversation with the other one. So I feel we're in communication. We've collaborated with all of these folks. We've collaborated through a lot of crazy rules with all the major portals as well as the major brokers. And I think as long as our communication channels are open and we're direct and honest about what it is we're doing, which we are with all of our brokers, with all of our portals, I think we're going to find ourselves not picking sides and not having to join the fight from some particular area, but understand that our rules that we've constructed actually facilitate and actually work for brokers as well as portals and everybody else out there. So I feel absolutely comfortable with where we are, and I do not, oh my gosh, I should say this, I don't have any wood to knock. I do not see ourselves I don't find us getting into some of the trouble that others are in right now. Trouble is not the right word, but in some of the situations that others are in right now.
Sure. Yeah. We all want to avoid it. Our sellers, the realtors, the brokers. Yeah, it's not a path anyone would choose. Um, so Zillow has taken this to federal court, alleging antitrust violations. How is Bright MLS's legal and executive team analyzing this lawsuit? And does it change how Bright writes or negotiates its own vendor data licensing agreements moving forward?
Again, I'm going to say to you, this is looking at the world right now and everybody's rules and how it is they're doing. Our rules do not favor or make it harder for any broker in our marketplace. And we've made sure that we've done that. So we don't have to defend what it is we're doing, one broker, one portal, one anything like that. We've made our rules and we've worked with our brokers and our in the portals in terms of how it is that we're doing this. We don't, like I said, we wouldn't form any agreement with one broker because that doesn't make any sense and it doesn't, I think, fulfill the idea that we're a broker cooperative in many sense, that we're cooperating with all the brokers on there. So I don't know that I'll see ourselves in sort of backed into any of those corners as others have found themselves. But you guys, we're going to find out a lot in terms of how these lawsuits go in the future here, and we'll see if there's any adjustments that we'll need to make when that time comes.
So basically, you provide an even playing field for all brokerages working with Bright, which is why a lawsuit like this is not really something on the horizon with Bright.
Look, you can be sued for anything, and we all know that. So I want to make sure that, if there's some lawsuit that comes in the next couple of weeks, that you said that would never happen. But we're not looking at our rules through any brokerage lens, through the Zillow lens, through any lens. We're looking for how can we provide the most transparent and complete marketplace for both agents, brokers, and ultimately whom they serve, which are the consumers out there. And I think as long as we keep those in mind, I think we'll find ourselves outside of where everybody else is trying to battle right now.
Okay. And this is a takes things in little different direction. So many of our members rely on Zillow-owned back-end tools like Showing
Yeah.
Time for daily operations. If data syndication disputes heat up nationally, what safeguards does Bright MLS have in place to ensure the day-to-day business tools aren't weaponized or disrupted for the average agent?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with how we write contracts with everybody out there. And, I didn't touch upon this before. We are fortunate that our general counsel, which happens to be a partner at Aaron Fox, is well renowned throughout the country. So we feel really comfortable about the advice we're getting when we do these things. it does come down to how your contracts are written and what happens when you get into trouble. And I think we've done a lot of good work on making sure that we don't back ourselves into a corner at any time with what it is we're doing. At the same time, we want to make sure that if anything happens with whatever it is that we're doing, we're not stuck relying on one vendor in terms of making sure that showings, as an example, which is, I think you brought it up as a question, or back office tools or whatever they are, stop because something's happening. So we've been working really hard for interoperability. Now you'd have to imagine that interoperability in showings can be very, very difficult and it's complicated. But we're still working on that, and I mean, right now we can use probably three major showing systems within our systems, although one is apparently dominant right now. But I think we're prepared if anything happens, or if people want to move, or if people want to stay where they are, or whatever it is. Um, our whole mission has been transparency on the one side and options on the other side. That if anything happens, we're not stuck in an area, and we're prepared to do that right now.
Okay. So, what should our members be telling their clients today if a local seller says, "Is my listing safe on Zillow?" or "Is our MLS going to pull it down like they did in Chicago?" We do run into consumers who are very aware of national news. How would you suggest we reply to that kind of questioning?
So I don't think it's from me. I don't think it's for me to say, is my listing safe on Zillow? I mean, the reality is Zillow's been doing this for a long time. I don't know what has happened in the past 6 months that would all of a sudden say that it's not safe on Zillow. I'm going to go back and say to you that we've constructed our rules. Our mission is transparency and obviously options for our brokers and agents. Um, we want to make sure that the transparency transcends whatever happens to business models out there, whatever happens. Again, we can say we're looking at this world right now through the lens of the internet, and that's great, and we should do that. Reality is we should probably have our other eye starting to look down the other road, which is artificial intelligence and how that's being done in terms of the rules out there, in terms of are photos allowed to stay out there? What do we do to pull photos? We've done a lot of things. We've considered a lot of things in our rules and in how we apply our rules in terms of if I want stuff pulled off the internet, if I never want it to go here, if I want photos taken down. So the reality is whatever happens to whatever portal you're talking about, we seem to be focused on one right now, but the others get a lot of action too, and we need to consider them as well too. That we have the tools that actually can help brokers and agents protect what it is they're doing for buyers and sellers out there, and we have those in place, and we'll always have those in place. Um, but that's what our job is, to make sure that those who are getting the data have the license to get the data, that are using the data correctly, and if things have to happen, they can actually affect whatever that is. Like I said, whether it's pulling photos out, whether it's not showing certain things, whether it's adhering to other rules that change in the future. But I think we've been on that. I think we've done a good job on that. We have a great team that is working on that. Again, part of our part of our board meeting every quarter that is we go over with our board where our rules are, what's happening out there, and what we should be considering for the future. So these things that are happening right now, we've been considering now for 2 years or even more, and have them in place prior to it. That's why when a lot of these things come out, last year, I think it was, NAR put new rules out on display or delayed marketing. We already had those in place for 2.5 years. So I feel comfortable that we've got the right process in place. We've got the right expertise in-house. The board is considering the right things, and we will make sure that nobody have to worry about is their listing safe here or there.
Sure. So, as we wrap up, is there anything we didn't cover that you feel our membership should know about this current situation?
Oh my God. Yeah, listen, it's not going to change. It's going to keep going this way. There's probably going to be five more things in the next month that we didn't talk about today. Um, we And again, we've barely touched upon artificial intelligence. We've barely touched upon what is happening out there with data. And data is everything, and particularly when you're going into the artificial intelligence world. We're considering things like, are we going to let other brokers train on brokers' data for what it is that they're doing in their world? And I'm just using that as one simple example, and it may not make a lot of sense, but that's where we need to be thinking now. And that is, how is artificial intelligence actually going to be used with other folks' information moving forward? To me, that's where we're going to, and it's going to happen fast. I think this stuff right now that we're fighting over is really, really important, and I'm not downplaying it all. But I think 6 months from now, 12 months from now, it's not going to matter because the world has actually gone and moved into the artificial intelligence world. And I think we need to be there. We need to make sure we're fine here, obviously. And I think we're going to continue to do that. But we're going to have our eye on where this market is going, and we're going to make sure that our brokers and agents are served as best as we possibly can as they serve their buyers and sellers.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time you've taken today to give our membership some clarity on Bright's position with the current situation in Chicago and Nashville. It sounds like we have to schedule another Q&A about AI in about 6 months.
I think it'll all be great. The one last thing I'll say to you, and I said this earlier, and I don't want to underplay it. Um, with all of this national coverage, with folks saying, "Oh, look, we're doing this, and we're changing our rule to this, and we're changing our rule to that," and us saying, "Shit, we've been doing this for years," right? I think this campaign of us showing what our rules are and what it is you can do as a broker, as an agent, to help your buyer or seller pick what it is that they want to do is very, very timely. And I would look for that for Bright in the next couple of weeks in terms of we will be putting out a lot of different things that I think that we can work with our associations to make sure, particularly listing brokers and agents out there know what it is they can do and how it is that they can direct their listings in the public world or stay in the private world or whatever it is they're trying to do. But as long as we make sure we have transparency, that's going to be really important over the next couple months.
Yeah, I think getting clarity on those rules is going to be really helpful to our membership.
Yep, I agree. And there's a lot of them, and it's not as easy as just saying, "Hey, you got this, you can do that." Once you put it in one status, you're moving it to another status. So I think we're going to see a lot of focus on that over the next 90 days.
That sounds great. Well, thank you again, Brian.
You
We
are,
really appreciate your time.
you are
And
very welcome.
yeah, we'll be talking again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.